everybody, I'm Liz, and it's been 3 months. So I wanted to do a very quick, brief wrap-up of the 15 books I read at the end of 2018, which encompasses the months of October all the way to the end of December. The first book I finished in October was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book has been circulating BookTube for a very long time and everybody loves it, me including. This book centers around two magicians who are battling out into this magician royale. They're showing each other up with their magical prowess, and it goes into the backstory of these two magicians, and it was just fantastic. I gave this book a 4.25 because I really loved this story. It was more of a romance fantasy than really like what I was thinking with a battle royale of two magicians. It was still really good, and the way they battle was very interesting because they really were just showing each other up on how they could better the circus. And everything just kind of falls apart, and the romance was a very good slow burn that you're rooting for at the end. Next, I finally finished The Night Film by Marisha Pessl, and this book was a roller coaster ride of weird and crazy. It takes place with the occult. It has this interesting dive into this famous movie star who creates obscene horror films, and it was very interesting. I was not expecting any of the twists and turns, and just where this journalist ends up in the discovery of how this director's daughter dies. I gave it a 4 stars because it was a really great spooky mystery that dabbles in a lot of mythology and demonology. However, the end was so convoluted, I seriously felt like I was on an acid trip, and it was just not exactly what I was expecting. Next, I finished City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. This is a beautiful middle grade novel where our main character sees ghosts, and she's seen ghosts ever since a near-death experience. And her parents are going to Edinburgh, Scotland, and to basically explore this haunted city. And in doing so, obviously she sees ghosts, things happen, and I loved it. It was a 5-star read. It was so cute and like so intriguing, and it left me wanting so much more because our main character doesn't really know what's going on. She doesn't know why she has this gift and how to utilize it. She really is just kind of figuring it out, and I want my hands on the next book to see how she continues to figure out this gift. And it really makes me excited because I am actually going to Edinburgh this summer, and so I can see all these places that are in the book, and I am so stoked. The next book I finished was Homegoing by Ya Jessie. This book was a 5-star read. It was phenomenal as it takes place with these two sisters in Africa in the 1700s, as their lives are really just forced upon themselves. One gets married to a slave trade master, the other one gets shipped off to America to be a slave. And it just shows how these two sisters, their lives are so altered and changed, and as their generations go along and their kids have kids, and all these historical events impact everybody until the generations meet up again in America in 1980. It was so good. I felt for these characters, and when you're a white person, you don't really realize, you can't really figure out like how people feel, especially with the Black history, the slave trade, and everything like that. But this book really puts it into perspective, and my heart goes out to these characters and anybody who definitely experiences this in their past. Now, I don't know exactly when I crossed into November because I didn't write it down, but I next finished Winter by Marissa Meyer, completing the Lunar Chronicles, and boy was I thrilled. I was so excited to meet Princess Winter, our next character that kind of follows the Snow White fairy tale. And then it also concludes with everything that happened with Cinder in the previous book, Scarlet, Cress, and I was so happy. This was definitely a strong conclusion. I think I'm also giving it a 5 stars. So the series in all is really great, and I give this series total a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I finished another Victoria Schwab book, which is The Savage Song. And I really want to read more Victoria Schwab because I have so many of her books, but I just haven't read them. And so I picked this one up on audio, and I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 stars out of 5. It's kind of a Romeo meets Juliet when Romeo is a monster because he was born due to a very serious, tragic event. And in this world, there are monsters that are created due to these violent streaks of crime, and the human realm is just kind of trying to figure out how to prevent them from harming them. There's safe zones. It's really interesting, really weird. There's basically 2 main families that are in the basically political strain of this, and 2 of our main characters are on opposite sides. I am really excited to see how this concludes, as I have the next one, which is Our Dark Duet. And I have to say, August is a very dreamy violin player, and I'm jealous because I've always wanted to learn how to play the violin. The next book I finished is actually one I listened to on audio, which is We Are Okay by Nina LaCour, and I loved this book. This book is it's not like super plot driven, it's just character driven in the sense where our main character is talking to her former best friend about why she skipped out of town last summer to join college across the United States. And it's a very slow book. It's not typically something that you read if it's like you need something that really drives you to read it, because it's seriously these 2 interactions over a 2-day period as they're explaining what's going on, and I seriously loved it. It was a fantastic read and gave it a 5 stars. Next, I tried my hand at some Kristen White with The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, and this book was very much so not what I expected. I still really enjoyed these characters that Kristen White adapted and how she took this story into Elizabeth Frankenstein's point of view as Victor Frankenstein creates his monster and deals with all the shenanigans from Mary Shelley's classic Frankenstein. There was some issues I had with the writing style, particularly dialogue, especially internal dialogue, where the characters talking to themselves and trying to figure things out. It seemed a little out of place. There was like weird exclamation points that I wouldn't myself put there, and so I wasn't quite sure how I fared with that. So I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read the audiobook of The Reader by Tracy Chee. And this story is a fantastical high fantasy world where books are banned. Nobody knows how to read. There are no stories anywhere. And books bring magic. So our main character finds a book, remembers how to read it from her past, and starts to find magic. This book goes through so many point of views that audiobook is not the best format for it, which really kind of hindered everything. And plus, I was way more interested in the actual story than the stories that our main character was reading in the book. And so I felt like it was a distraction from the story. And so I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I still want to continue with the series because that main plot is so interesting that I want to figure out where it goes next. The next book I read was The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. And this book is amazing. It is seriously the best book I've probably ever read in all of 2018. I legitimately cried and sobbed, and I wanted to have a color wheel next to me because there's so many different colors expressed in this book, and I still think about it and how important family is in this book, especially when overcoming grief, because our main character is trying to deal with her mother's suicide, and in doing so, she goes to Taiwan to finally meet her mother's parents. And so a lot of stuff happens. It is a cool, like, paranormal, but also very realistic fantasy and fictional novel. And I loved it so much. I want to read all the books of Emily X. Pan from this. So obviously this gets a 5 out of 5, but really it's a 10 out of 5 because it was so amazing and so breathtaking. There is a romance in this book, but it's very much on the sidelines because the primary topic is all about her figuring out her mother's past and what led her up to committing suicide, and just kind of figuring it out and reconnecting with her father and reconnecting with herself, and it was breathtaking. Next, I got my heart ripped out by Saga Volume 9 by Fiona Staples and Brian Vaughan. This freaking installment killed me. I can't talk about it because obvious spoilers, but the thing that kills me the most is the fact that book volume 10 has no release date. It's not even mentioned because the author is on hiatus to do other things, and so I have no idea how to deal with the cliffhanger at the end of this volume, and I am heartbroken. So heartbroken, but I love this series so much, and this is getting a lovely 5 out of 5. Then I finished The Wicked and the Divine Volume 7, Mothering Invention, and this, I have no idea what to make of this series because it is changed and altered and the plot is everywhere. I love the characters, I want to know what happens next, but I seriously have no idea what's going on, and I like that, but at the same time I don't. And so it's very interesting, and I'm giving this particular volume a 4 out of 5. Then I finished Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. I've been wanting to read this for a long time. I tried the audiobook, again, multiple point of views, so I couldn't do it, and I just physically read it, which helped out a lot. It's the only way I can do multiple point of views. If there's more than 3 point of views, audiobooks are not for me. So I read it. It's about a woman who drowns, supposedly, in the drowning pool, which is a notorious UK small town pool that a lot of people in the past history have drowned in. She was researching this pool, and so it's very controversial that she was found dead in this pool. And so her sister, who's estranged, comes back, helps her daughter and everything kind of investigate and figure out what's going on. Lots of stuff. There's a lot of shady stuff in this town, and a lot of people are keeping secrets, and so that's really what this book dives into, and it mixes from past to present, and it was very entertaining. I was so glad I was actually able to read this. I didn't love it as much as I loved The Girl on the Train, but I still really enjoyed this and gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Then I continued on my Vampire Chronicles journey with Anne Rice and read The Vampire Lestat. I read a majority of this book with the assistance of audio, and then I finished the last, I think, 50 or so pages by physically reading it. And like I said, the audiobook makes it so entertaining because the voice is great, especially because this is a very dense book. But really, this is like a precursor to The Queen of the Damned. It was very interesting kind of seeing Lestat's point of view with Louis and diving into a lot of his history. So I did enjoy those elements in learning things that are new, but like I said, it's a lot of writing, it's very dense, and so I give this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I finished off 2018 by finally reading Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban with the illustrated edition. And I am so happy I did. I have had a huge grudge on the movie the third movie because of how they changed everything and moved things around, basically hodgepodging everything. And reading this book actually consolidated a lot of those changes in the movie. The only thing that will never be consolidated was how they have the firebolt at the end. I'm still not okay with that, and I don't think I ever will be. But I still really love the story. It's still probably my favorite book, at least so far, because I seriously love Lupin, and I will never stop loving him. And so I'm so excited to continue on with my reread of the series, because I haven't, after this point, I have not reread a single book. So I'm so excited to dive back in. So there we go. 15 books. I had a really great end of the year read. Like, I didn't actually dislike or hate any of the books that I read, which is fantastic. Actually says a lot about my reading in all of 2018, because I don't think I really hated any of the books or disliked any of the books I did end up reading. Most of the reads I have are very diverse, whether it's author, subject matter. Looking at my reading statistics, I'm stoked, as I, at the end of the year, read a total of 65 books when I was shooting for 50. And so reading all those books was fantastic, and I'm super happy and pleased with myself. Now, as with everything I do, I always talk about books I am currently reading, which is this here, Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I wanted to read this book all of the end of last year, and I didn't, and so I'm finally glad that I am reading this. It is basically this really awesome, fantastical world, and I love it so much. The main character, Zelie, is a diviner. She has powers, but because the magical world has been stripped from the human world, though she has divine powers, she can't use any of them. And things happen to where magic might be able to be reborn, and Zelie takes up that task to try to reinvigorate magic. And it is so fantastic so far, guys. I am about halfway. I was hoping to finish it by the end of this month, but I don't think that'll happen. So there we have it. These stories are amazing, and I'm so glad I am back in the booktube world, because I have missed you guys so much. Thank you for holding out and sticking around for me, watching this crazy long video. I love you guys. I love your support. I hope you stick around by liking, subscribing, leaving me comments down below about what books you are currently reading and if you like them. And I will see you very soon. Bye!